You want to know the moment everything changes? It's the instant you stop striving to be heard and instead let your absence speak. Silence, true, intentional silence, is not passivity. It is a calculated, deeply active psychological repositioning. For many men, it's the first time they truly hear you. We live in a culture that glorifies constant communication, texts, calls, endless explanations. But relationships don't thrive on volume. They thrive on resonance. And nothing resonates more profoundly than unexpected silence, especially when it comes from a woman he believed he still held emotional access to. When you withdraw your energy completely, you're removing the very supply he's unconsciously addicted to. Your availability, your warmth, your approval, even your frustration. This withdrawal thrusts him into a psychological void, a space his mind instinctively seeks to fill. We don't receive silence neutrally. We interpret it, we analyze it. And in a man's mind, that analysis often spirals into obsession. There's a mechanism in psychology called intermittent reinforcement. It's what makes gambling addictive. It's what keeps people hooked on emotionally unavailable partners. But when you shift from intermittently present to completely gone, totally disengaged, something even more potent unfolds. You become the unresolved story in his psyche, the emotional thread. You become the loose end he can't tie off. And men don't handle unfinished stories well. They loop back, they replay moments, they cling to what they can't resolve. But this only works when your silence is authentic, not a staged performance. If you're still checking his stories, still stalking his feed, still drafting unsent passages in your notes, you haven't left. You're merely muted. And muted isn't mastery, it's friction, without flow. True silence arrives when your gaze no longer lands on him at all, when your days you unfurl beyond the margins of that relationship, when your universe stops orbiting his gravity. This isn't punishment, it isn't manipulation, it's reclaiming your emotional sovereignty, because you cannot heal in the very soil that wounded you, nor flourish in the dynamic that undervalued you. Stepping away isn't spectacle, it's self-discipline, a pact with yourself. And when you enact this genuineness, he begins to unravel. His ego insists you should be chasing, pleading, but you remain still. His mind whispers that you've surely moved on, but what if you haven't? That question becomes his torment, because if you have moved on, it means he lost something authentic, something he may never recreate. He believed he could always return to you, that your door would remain ajar. Maybe he's with someone else now, perhaps already attempting to replace you. But here's the truth few dare to voice. Replacements don't erase emotional imprints. They merely postpone their reckoning. No one forgets the woman who walked away with her dignity intact, especially when she did so without slamming doors, without theatrics, without the need to be witnessed. That kind of departure leaves a subtle yet profound mark. So when the urge arises to speak, to justify, to remind him of your worth, pause. Let your absence do the talking. Withdraw your energy fully and trust that real silence will echo. And when someone leaves you for another, the instinct to compare, to wonder if she's prettier, more exciting, more agreeable, is a trap. That spiral only serves to anchor your energy, keeping you bound to a story that no longer serves you. You may still find yourself orbiting around his choice, hovering at the perimeter of his life, waiting for an invitation to re-enter, bracing for permission to invade his space. When someone leaves you, there's a fleeting surge of power, but it's quickly eclipsed by fear, that whispering doubt tugging you back into orbit around his absence. Yet the real glow-up doesn't come from competing. It comes from withdrawing entirely from the contest. It's stepping off the emotional battlefield and returning to your inner home base, your values, your rituals, your own unhurried rhythm. Let's talk psychology. In the aftermath of a breakup, your brain undergoes a kind of identity disintegration. The you once were feels unmoored, and that's why post-breakup grief cuts so deeply. You're mourning not only him, but the version of yourself who lived within that shared story. And this rupture, painful as it is, creates a clearing. Where there's space, there's room to reinvent. So you begin gently, rising early even when you don't want to, nourishing your body with kindness rather than punishment, moving, not for an audience, but to feel your own strength returning, whether through a walk, a dance, or lifting at the gym. You change your hair, not for his gaze, but to rewrite the way you see yourself. Every small act of self-care becomes a sentence in your new narrative. I am becoming someone who no longer orbits another's choice, but orbits her own becoming. I'm proud to be this woman, whether or not he ever notices. Maybe he will. Perhaps he'll glimpse the new photos or hear through mutual friends that I've been laughing in places he never expected. But by then, it won't be about proving anything to him, because I've already proven it to myself. I've crafted a life so abundant, so anchored, so emotionally nourishing that he no longer occupies the center of my story. He's just a past chapter. And this transformation isn't merely skin deep. That's where most conversations about glow-ups go astray. The most profound metamorphosis is energetic, a radiance born from reclaiming my own essence. And here's the irony when you step fully into this version of yourself. Radiant self, condemned, unavailable to games or half-love, that's often the moment he comes back. Not because you asked him to, but because your growth has created contrast. He looks at you and realizes she's not the same. And maybe, just maybe, she's out of reach now. But by then, it's no longer about him, because you've already returned to yourself. Let your evolution be so deep, so undeniable, that he can't recognize the woman who once waited for his validation. There's something most people don't understand about emotional. It's the way your presence fills a room without effort. The calm in your gaze, the precision of your voice, where you no longer chase conversations because your attention has become sacred. You are no longer vying to be chosen. You choose yourself again and again in every small decision. Philosophically, this is individuation. The soul's journey toward wholeness on your own terms, as Carl Jung described, and heartbreak, paradoxically, often becomes its doorway. When someone else strips away the illusion of who you thought you were, you finally get the chance to reconstruct something authentic. We don't remember people for their perfection. We remember how they made us feel in our most vulnerable spaces. That's why, even if he's moved on, even if he appears content, the imprint of emotional safety you once offered lingers at the edge of his psyche, subtle as a shadow that never quite leaves the room. Men may seek novelty, validation, admiration, but those are surface-level thrills that feed the ego, not the soul. What endures long after the rush is the emotional atmosphere you created, the stillness, the deep understanding, the freedom to be seen without judgment. This isn't softness or mere accommodation. This is emotional intelligence at its most powerful. It's about honesty and openness with your feelings, about emotional intelligence in its purest form. It's the capacity to be seen without judgment, to hold space without shrinking, to love without losing yourself. This rare ability to remain fully present while honoring your own boundaries is what gives your silence its depth. What makes this so disruptive is contrast. You no longer engage in emotional chaos. You don't fight for clarity, demand closure, or beg to be understood. In stepping away from the drama, you become the opposite of what most people bring into his life. He may not understand why he can't stop thinking about you, nor consciously admit it. But somewhere in his mind, he recalls the calm he felt when you truly saw him. There's a psychological principle called the peak end rule. We don't remember every detail, only the emotional high point and the way an experience concludes. When you end things with grace, without burning bridges, desperation, or resentment, you leave behind an emotional signature that's hard to replace. His new story may continue, but it lacks the closure your chapter provided. Instead, he's left with your quiet absence and the unresolved memory of feeling understood in a way he hasn't since. Begging, arguing, explaining, none of it works, because it traps you in the role of someone still pleading to be chosen. But when you step back and opt for neutrality over reaction, you flip the script entirely. You stop being the woman who needs him and become the woman he's no longer sure he deserved. That ambiguity is potent. We're haunted more by what might have been than by whatever was. We often mistake power for control, leverage, or the contest of who cares less. True power, the force that reshapes dynamics, is emotional clarity. It's knowing your value so deeply that you no longer need to prove it. It's trusting that the connection you offered was so rare, so rooted in truth, that it will be missed not because you forced it to be, but because it was irreplaceable. This isn't a game, it's a reframe. Once you grasp it, you no longer seek validation from the one who left, because you see what he cannot yet see. The love you gave wasn't weak, naive, or disposable. It was sacred. And sacred things are often recognized only in hindsight. So instead of reminding him what he lost, become the reminder. Through your silence, through your growth, through the calm resolve that no longer chases anything misaligned. This is how you rewire the emotional narrative, how you linger in his mind long after the noise of his new story fades, and leave behind the kind of peace that truly endures. When you undercut the unpredictable turbulence he's grown accustomed to, chaos suddenly seems tame compared to your serene absence. If you truly want to become unforgettable, not through drama or desperation, but on a profound psychological level, you must reclaim your feminine magnetism and then vanish from his world entirely. And by vanish, I don't mean deleting social media or changing your number. I mean withdrawing your emotional availability. It isn't loud or performative. It's a quiet force that lingers long after you've left the room, and psychologically it unsettles far more than any confrontation ever could. Most men, even those who have moved on, depend on a familiar emotional rhythm, assuming you'll stay tethered, still watching, still wanting. But when that supply evaporates, when your attention vanishes even subtly, they don't just notice. They begin to question every choice they made, because losing you isn't only about your absence, but about the irreplaceable way you made them feel. There's a warm feminine essence you possess, one that no number of new connections can replicate. It harks back to something profoundly archetypal. In myth, the feminine isn't the pursuer, but the mystery, the muse, the invitation. Yet modern culture flips that polarity on its head, teaching women to chase, to prove, to broadcast their pain. True power, however, lives in mystery, in restraint, in being fully alive, fully luminous, and entirely out of reach. To reclaim that power, you must draw back your energy and inhabit your sensuality, not as a performance, but as a deeply embodied state. Notice how you move, how you speak, how you dress, not for another's gaze, but as an expression of your internal alignment. When your inner world is coherent and your energy no longer leaks into someone else's story, your outer presence becomes magnetic. You don't chase, you simply pull. This isn't about feigning detachment. It's about becoming emotionally autonomous. It's reaching a place where his presence or absence no longer dictates your value, where your self-worth isn't outsourced. From that place of sovereignty, you disappear, not to provoke anxiety, but because you're simply no longer available to be toyed with. That earlier version of you, hungry, seeking, pleading, no longer exists. And here's what happens when he can no longer feel your energy, when he realizes you've quietly withdrawn your light from his world. That's when the craving begins. Because the presence he once took for granted, your steadfast loyalty and quiet availability has simply evaporated. And though someone new may extend him attention, perhaps even genuine warmth, she can never channel the singular energetic signature that is yours alone. The delicious irony is that the instant you cease striving to occupy space in his mind is the instant you become impossible to forget. Allow the version of yourself he undervalued to dissolve into absence. Let her slip away without drama or announcement, and let the woman you are evolving into stand fully sovereign, self-contained, and utterly out of his reach, because it is that very distance that sparks the deepest longing and cements your place in his psyche.